Good morning everyone, it's Peter, Iridium Consulting. So about 10 years ago I was on a mountaineering trip in the Swiss Alps and we were walking, not climbing one day, from mountain hut to mountain hut. And we were following this faint line on the map. There was no difficulty, there was no danger involved. The only difficulty, the only challenge was that the route wasn't very clear, the map wasn't very clear, the line was very faint. I was reasonably confident it was going to take us to our destination, but my buddy wasn't. He kept saying things to me like, Peter, we need to go back to that last junction and look again. Or he'd say, Peter, we should be walking uphill, not downhill. So his doubt in my ability to find the route undermined me a little bit, undermined my sense of confidence. But I looked at the map and I could see maybe 10 minutes ahead, the route seemed to change and turn in the right direction. So I said it to him, look, why don't we go for 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, then make a decision. So after 10 minutes, the route luckily did change and did start going in the right direction. He didn't say anything at the time, but I could feel after a few minutes he was much more confident. He felt we were on the right track. And then he said to me at one stage, Peter, we're going to be there for lunch. And at that stage, I knew that he knew we were on the right route. So another day, this time in the Wicklow Mountains, it was dark, it was getting towards the evening, it was cold, it was beginning to snow a little bit, and I and a group of friends were trying to find the top of a mountain. I again was the one with the map, I was the one with the map and the compass, so everybody thought Peter knows where he's going, Peter understands what the top of the mountain is, but this time it was me that did it myself. But you know, I had a map, I had a reasonable sense of where I was going. I put my head down and I just took the steps in the direction that I thought was the right direction, uphill. And you know what? After a while we did find the top of that mountain. But that time it wasn't my colleagues that doubted me, it was me that doubted me. So there's two very different instances in the mountains. One instance where my buddy had a little bit of a lack of faith in my ability to find the route to our goal. And the second instance where I was the one that doubted my own ability to find the route. But in both of those instances, you've got to show confidence even though you don't necessarily feel confidence. If you don't show confidence, your team will lose faith in your ability to lead and your team will go or begin to go in different directions. But I had something to help me. I had a map, I had a plan. And a plan or a map will show you your destination. It will lay out what you're trying to achieve and it will show you the route to that destination. So even though you can't see right now what you're trying to do, you can't see right now the top of the mountain, it will tell you what steps you need to take to get there. And all I did in both of those instances was take steps in what I believed was the right direction. So business can be a little bit like that at times. Sometimes you can't see the route ahead very clearly. Sometimes you have a little bit of doubt about what lies in your path. And sometimes your team will doubt you. And there are other times when you feel doubt in your own abilities to lead. If that happens to you, you've got to show confidence, even though you don't necessarily feel confident inside, even though you have doubts about your direction and where you're heading. If you don't, your team will pick up on that self-doubt. Your team will begin to understand or realize that you're not quite sure where you're going, that you don't have a sense of destination, that you don't have a sense of focus. And then what will happen? They'll stop working as a team, they'll begin to pick up their own ideas, they'll begin to go in their own direction, and your team will ultimately stop working as a team. I was with a client of mine last week. He's in the hospitality business, he's down the country, and he'd asked me to drop down and have a conversation with him about his plans for the future. He has some plans, he has a vision for the future of his business. So I dropped down to the middle of last week and I spent about 3 hours with him, walking, talking, looking at the business, talking about his plans, talking about his vision. And at times I had a little bit of difficulty understanding what he was trying to achieve. I had a little bit of difficulty interpreting his vision into something real. And at one point I said to him, look, why don't you put your plans on paper? Why don't you create a brochure for your future business? And he looked at me at the time and he said, Peter, that's not a great idea. That won't work. So we went away, we had lunch, we talked a bit more. More to the point, I let him talk because I felt he wanted to air his views about the future business. And after a while he said to me, Peter, that idea about the brochure, that's a great idea. I'm going to go and do that. So now he's working on a future brochure, a brochure for his future business. And it's going to be visual, it's going to be his ideas in picture format. And that gives him a great sense of what he's trying to achieve. That gives him a great sense of destination. And I can then come in a couple of weeks' time, look at his ideas, look at his plan, and understand what he is trying to achieve, understand his destination for his business. So I talk to business owners a lot about, what are you trying to achieve? What's your goal? What's your destination? And then what's your route to that goal? And then the question I ask is your team walking the same route that you are? And if your team is walking a different route than you're walking, you're both going to end up in a different destination. So you need a business plan in place, you need a map for your future business. And once you have that map in place, once you have that plan in place, instead of taking some steps towards some destination, you are now taking measured steps towards a goal. So I'll finish by going back to my buddy that morning last week. We'd been talking about business planning, we'd been talking about visions, we'd been talking about goals, and one of the words we used was destinations. What are you trying to achieve? And as I got into my car that day last week, he said something to me that I think was very telling. He turned to me and he said to me, Peter, I've been thinking a lot about the business this morning, and one of the things I've come to realize is that we, as a hospitality business, need to become a destination for our customers. So I've talked about a number of different topics in this video. I've talked about leadership, and I've talked about being doubted in your abilities as a leader by your team, and I've talked about you doubting your own abilities as a leader. I've also talked about business planning, business mapping, and making sure that you, as a business owner, have a clear destination in your mind for your business. And last but not least, I talked about this idea of you making your business a very clear destination for your clients and for your customers, one that your clients and your customers really want to visit. If you want to have a further chat about any of these topics, let's chat, let's meet, let's have a coffee. The number's on screen, my email address is on screen. That's me, Peter, Iridium Consulting, and thank you for listening.